All right, good morning. Welcome in Baseball and Coffee, January 9th, Friday, January 9th. And there she is, the one and only Daisy Bean. Daisy Bean joining the broadcast, Coffee Bean. So, you want to take her for a little bit and then she'll sit with me?
It's up to
You bring her back to me in a little bit?
Sure.
All right. Here you go. She's doing good though, so all good. Hope everybody else is doing good. Good morning. I have not been here, so I got to make sure all my screens are working. Which it looks like they are. I have to load up my name tags for Mr. Johnston. So I got a couple housekeeping things to do while we start here in the morning. And then we'll get into talking a little bit about this Skubal Tigers and some other fun stuff. Let's see here. Download. She is a cutie. She sure is. Oh, God.
What?
My messages aren't popping up on screen. Oh, boy. We are off to a humming start today. Not great. Where's my messages? Why aren't they coming up on screen?
Your office is freezing.
All right, so just bear with me for a minute as I have to do a little downloading and a little fixing of some things real quick. Where did this just go to? You know what? They're probably in my downloading. They're in my download.
Messages are coming up.
No, but I can't pop them onto the screen, so that's on my end. I have to fix that. Which I will. I'll work to fix that here in the early going, and then we'll be rolling. But I have to get his name tags all locked in, so you got to give me a sec here, peoples. Sorry about this.
That's my fault.
I just got back, so we didn't have any chance to actually do any of this before the stream started.
So cold.
I'm so confused. Why is this? Move to desktop. There we go. Okay, now I can close that one. Move to...
You insane?
I know I have no heat.
Oh my God.
It's fine.
We're gonna die.
No, we're not gonna die. We're totally fine. All right, let me get it all in the right folders.
Freeze out a dog.
I'm not freezing out a dog. I mean, it's not cold in here, but it's not warm either. So, okay, so first thing we got to do is we got to switch the Justin Courtney name tag here. Watch this. We go a little properties, boom. Troy Johnston, boom, you're in. Boom, and then back on the main screen where we have this little thing right here. We got to swap that out. Oop, don't want to do that. Clicked on the wrong thing. Properties, browse, TJ, boom. Okay. I know I should have done this beforehand, but we didn't have any of this until just now, so stick with me here. And we will get the show started. Okay. All right. One more thing, actually. I got to be able to get my chat on screen, which is a little odd right now. What is going on with that? think maybe I gotta pop my chat out. Maybe pop out chat. Super weird. Thoughts on teams considering Imai as a reliever? Well, Imai's already signed up as a starter, so that's not going to be. Question for Daisy Bean: do you prefer XFIP or Sierra when evaluating performance? Great question. I don't know. Daisy would have to answer that. I think she's more of a results-based dog. She doesn't really quite understand maybe the nuance yet of the advanced stats, the under-the-hood stuff. We have an Ozuna question here. I really want to get the chat questions on screen, and I'm not really sure why they're not. So this is annoying. Let me try to figure this one out.
Taking her out of here till your heat kits
Let me close that doc and then try to reopen the doc. Well, let's see if I type something in here. Hello. And yet, no, that does not come up. That is so annoying. Chat highlights there. Who do I trust more on a longer deal? Oh, there we go. Thanks, Carl. All right, we're rolling now. We're back in the hunt. All right, who do I trust more on a longer deal? Valdez or Suarez? Definitely Valdez. Just stuff-wise, I just think he's a better pitcher. I know that there's some personality concerns with Framber. Certainly understand that. Get it. But looking at between him and Suarez, Valdez is the better pitcher, and his stuff has held up a little bit better. I know that he's we got to check out the ages here, but I mean, he's got a lengthy track record of being really, really good, plus really, really good in the postseason, and he's still averaging 94.2 on the sinker, way above average. So just from a stuff perspective, there's really no comparison. I know Ranger's an incredible pitcher, and I would love him on a short-term deal. But I have concerns a little bit about the velocity part of it, and I know velocity is not everything. It just gets to an untenable spot when you're averaging 90.1. I think ultimately that's a bit of a concern. It's continued to decline over the last few years. Let's see here. Let me get out my trusty pencil here. Okay. So yeah, I mean, Ranger Suarez was at 93.2 in 2022 on his four-seam, 92.5 on his sinker. 2023, 92.8, 93.4, still tremendous, really good numbers to be at for a command pitcher, left-handed. And then it really started to drop off. 91.8, 90.8 in 24, and then in 25, he averaged 90.1 on his sinker and 91.3 on the four-seam. Now, look, I'm not a big velocity as everything guy, especially as a starter. Like, this guy's going to come in and pitch well and be super effective and keep you in games. But if he drops under 90, if he can't reverse this trend or at least stabilize this trend a little bit, it's going to be troublesome. Definitely, without a doubt. He is the younger player. He's 30, so this should not be the case, but it kind of is the case. So if I'm looking to sign Ranger Suarez, I'm looking to get a little bit of insight, maybe biomechanically, what changed. I'd love to talk to the player, get their perspective on it. I would have to do a little bit of a deeper dive than we can do on this show, where we just take a quick gander at some of the numbers and say, oh, trending down, trending up. I'm not somebody who thinks that just because you're trending down in an area doesn't mean you can't then trend up. Of course you can. You can always get better. You can train things nowadays. And obviously Ranger's a really good pitcher, driven by incredible contact control, incredible command. Gets a lot of strikeouts looking, which covers up a lot of his swing and miss issues. Being below average in whiff percentage, but yet still above average in K percentage. What does that mean? Probably you're really good at picking your spots, finishing off guys when you need to, but it's not, your overall game's not built around whiff. So I like him a lot, like I do, but in terms of just the comparison, I had Valdez as my top, ranked pitcher for a reason. And it's basically because of the combination of left-handed stuff, track record, postseason track record. He's just been really, really good for a while. And he's not a guy that, relies on one elite pitch. He's got two elite pitches in the sinker and the curveball. I also like his changeup. Because he's a contact pitcher, he's not going to max out on these ex-WOBAs, But he's getting ground balls all day. He's filling innings, and I personally seen him step up on the biggest stage. He came through and shut us down 2021 ALCS Game 5, basically a complete game shutty at Fenway when they needed it. They were kind of in trouble with the pitching. He steps up huge. I think a big concern, not a concern, but something to watch is just getting that curveball back to maximum effectiveness. Some reason last year, -2 run value despite a 193 batting average on it. He had a 14 run value the previous year on the curveball. I think his curveball's one of the best pitches in the game, especially for a starter. I love his knuckle curve, but intriguing that it didn't really actually all tie into run value last year, although I think that's a little bit fluky looking at these stats. 43.7% whiff rate, 30% put away rate, 163 expected batting average. Like, the numbers are all still there. But, he just gets so many easy outs with the sinker. So that's a little bit of what you're looking at with Framber. I know they're going to be compared, lefties, yada, yada, yada. But that's kind of where I'm sitting with that. Do you want to give her to me?
Yeah, because I have to get ready for the girls.
Okay. Does she want the blankie?
Yeah, she's freezing.
All right, just drop her on my lap here so I can do the show without having to, like I did it with Boo the other day. All right. Okay. So here we go. I see this Luke Weaver question. We'll get there in a minute. If a pitcher on your team did what Valdez did, how would you have handled it as a teammate? So you got to believe that there's a lot of history here in the clubhouse. We don't know how Framber moved throughout the clubhouse. I certainly heard some rumors over the years that weren't so kind to him, but I wasn't in there personally. I know that if you have a player that at times, things need to be addressed, you do it the right way. You do it with love. You lead with love always. Even if you're giving a critique or you're coming in trying to say, hey, like, that's not how we do things around here, or hey, this could help you for XYZ reasons, you approach it with love from the beginning. So we don't know kind of what happened leading up to this and what level of response was probably appropriate. If this is something where it's like a guy's just not getting it through his head, maybe you need to be a little more firm in this spot. Like, hey, that was embarrassing. That's not who you are as a player. Don't let the world see that. You need to care about your teammates, etc. But again, I don't know what the lead up to it was. So, you handle it always in-house the right way, which is individually and not like in a combative way. But sometimes you have to be a little more firm, but still with love there. You still have to come at it from a standpoint of, caring about the person and understanding that sometimes our behavior is not always about somebody else. Sometimes people have things going on inside. So you always approach things with care. But yeah, I mean, that would have had to been addressed, obviously, for sure. How much do you read into a team's lack of interest in retaining a player? Interesting juxtaposition between Bregman and Belly and Valdez and Tucker. Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you know a player, you know the good, you know the bad. Maybe you understand the personality a little more, how they fit in with your team, how they maybe drove winning or didn't drive winning. So I think it's intriguing when the incumbent team doesn't push that hard for a player. But honestly, we don't usually know the reality of how hard teams push for players. There's a lot of stuff that's put on to MLB trade rumors, and most of it's leaks from agents or teams. So I say take a lot of that with a grain of salt. I do think with these players in particular, like, I put Bichette in this category too. Like, you would have thought if Toronto really wanted him back, that would have been an easy thing to negotiate. But that's not where we're at with these things dragging out a little bit. There's also sometimes a little bit of a factor and there's something to it on the player side where you can be a little bit like, well, they have to know how good I was for this team and how important I am for this team. Oh crap! I just spilled my whole coffee. Brett, or Rosie, can I get a paper towel? So it's like you sometimes, like, I remember when I was done in 21 with the Red Sox, I know I had a 4 ERA, but I was great that year and win probability added. Like, I was stranding runners like crazy, helping people all over the clubhouse. You do feel a little bit of an entitlement.
Did you pee?
I spilled coffee, but it's on the plastic.
God.
It's on the plastic.
I thought it was pee.
No. And so, you know, you start to think, well, they should value me, and then that becomes more of an emotional type time for a player. Like when they feel like these people know me, they should want me. So sometimes that actually drives breakups with teams because you feel disrespected by a team that you feel like should love you and want you. You know, certainly with Pete Alonso, that probably played a factor, and some others. You know, even the Edwin thing with the Mets to some extent. You know, you want to be shown some level of love that maybe you feel like you deserve, and maybe that's unrealistic to expect. But I do think people have that mindset sometimes. This happens in all sports. Why do you think some players fall off way harder than others slightly later in their careers? So I mean, I think genetics play a part in it, of course, but I also think it's work ethic. How does the money change you? All of a sudden, you've reached your goal, like your first goal of like getting that big bag, that paycheck, and now you're taking care of your family, and you're in a little different spot, and maybe the incentives are a little bit different, the carrot and the stick, right? So you know, some players take that money and they reinvest it and they're obsessed with finding their potential. And those are the types of guys you want to give money to. And then there's some guys that get the money and they're just on cruise control the rest of the way. Very important to identify that ahead of time if possible. Do I think clubhouse cancers are a real thing? Absolutely. I've been in some clubhouses with where you delete one guy and everything kind of improves from there. And maybe they're not a full cancer, but like the power dynamic swings in a different direction and the clubhouse gets cleaned up really, really well. I'll give a quick example, and I certainly don't think this guy was a cancer, but I'll give an example of how a clubhouse can turn on a dime. So Rockies, when I get there, 2012 all the way through 2015, 2016. Obviously, it's Tulowitzki's team. He's the franchise player, and he was a good franchise player. Cared about everybody. I don't think he was a cancer at all, but I do think that the clubhouse's vibe was kind of created in the fashion that him and Todd Helton said it, right? And then so the clubhouse was very one way, and I also feel like those guys dealt with a lot of frustration during their time with the Rockies. So there was definitely a little bit of a some PTSD from some stuff they had gone through over the years. You fast forward to 2016, the trade ends up happening. They trade Latroy and Tulo to Toronto, basically for some spare parts. They get Reyes back, but also Jeff Hoffman, Miguel Castro. But at that moment, the clubhouse now, Helton was retired. The clubhouse now shifted more to Carlos Gonzalez, Charlie Blackmon, Nolan Arenado. Um, some of the other pitchers became some more of the leadership role, and now the clubhouse all of a sudden had a different feel. So it's not like a cancer, but there have been situations where you take a person out, you put a person in, and it completely changes the fabric of a clubhouse. Also, I'll give you 2024 Mets, obviously JD Martinez, Jose Iglesias, a couple others. We're there. The vibe is one way. You take those guys out, the vibe changes. So sometimes it's hard to tell. That's why they call it chemistry. You're putting a lot of these potions together. You don't exactly know what the end result will be, but certainly the chemistry changes with an ingredient or without an ingredient. I also think anecdotally it's possible to be such a cancer that you become the common enemy of the team, and then the team bands together even more. I've been on teams with this too, where there's one guy where everybody can't stand him, and in a way it kind of brings them together. I know that's insane to say, and you don't want to be that guy, but that could definitely happen. Do you think the Jays will keep Hoffman as a closer or give Varland a shot? I do think their bullpen functions the best right now with Jeff closing. Let me go over to their roster so we can take a quick look at their bullpen, because I like Varland in the fireman role. I know that at times that kind of blew up in their face a little bit in the postseason, but I like him in the fireman role mainly because Tyler Rogers, who was the big signing, I don't like in the fireman role. I want him to be lined up to throw clean innings. He does give up some hits. He has not a lot of strikeout in his game, but he tends to generally put up a 0 if you give him a clean slate. Varland's a little more electric. You bring him in, he can punch some tickets, get you out of some jams. I like that dynamic. Now, they could flip it. They could flip Hoffman and Varland. Hoffman had that role a bit with Philly, so it's nothing he's unfamiliar with. But from a, and this is crazy because this is a very rich team, but from a financial perspective, it makes all the sense in the world to not make Varland closer. He becomes expensive once he hits arbitration with saves, whereas you keep him in a setup hybrid role, you're actually maybe getting more leverage out of him and not having to pay him. You already have cost certainty with Hoffman. You know what you're paying him, so instead of inflating another person's future salary, that's probably how they'll play it to start off. I wouldn't think anything would change. Yimi Garcia will be a setup. Tyler Rogers will be a setup. Varland will probably be a fireman. And then they'll keep Hoffman probably in that closer role. That would be my answer to that. All right, I've got to get to this question. Sports Factories has been asking me this for a bit. Will Luke Weaver perform better or Devin Williams for Mets, reliever or closer? I think it's fairly straightforward that Devin Williams will be the Mets closer. He is a closer. I know that it got flipped for a little bit last year, but you look at the track record, he's a top 5 reliever in the sport. Perhaps closer to the top 2 or 3, to be honest. I know last year was not his best in terms of results, but you look under the hood, they were still really good. I think he's just a little bit more unhittable, and at the end of the day, that's what you want. Also, Weaver, given his starting pedigree, I like him a little more for 4+ outs. So I like the flexibility of having Weaver able to come in 6th, 7th, 8th inning, right? And also he's probably more of a reverse split guy. I think Devin's pretty wipeout versus both. So I would expect Devin just from that perspective, but it's not bad to have the fallback option in Weaver. And even Minter's done quite a bit of closing as well in his career for the Braves. So they have some options here, but I would definitely evaluate Williams as the closer for now. And I think that's fairly straightforward, personally. So expect to see Devin Williams, the Airbender, as the closer to start off this year for the Metros. On the clubhouse stuff, how should an executive who hasn't played in the majors learn to understand what is needed in a clubhouse dynamic and make the chemistry work? So the idea of making the chemistry work isn't really a thing. It's not something that can be forced. I just think you have to have a pulse. You don't want to have like spies down there. You don't want to be a spy, but I think it's important to understand. Don't ignore the personalities of your players. Don't ignore what your players are telling you and the cues that they're giving you, and relying on your clubhouse guys, the guys that get to know them, the clubbies, the chefs. And you should also form relationships with all your players too. But ultimately, you have to have a sense of things, how the pieces fit together. And maybe sometimes it's hard to know ahead of time, but just you gotta monitor it, because clubhouse unrest can really torpedo a team. Now, a lot of people will say it's really a chicken and or egg situation. You start with winning, and the clubhouse comes together. So winning solves everything, and on a lot of levels, that's true. But it's something to keep an eye on. It's something I'd always be worried about. And really, it's all about doing your due diligence on every single aspect of your roster, which includes personalities. All right, let's get into some of the ARB stuff. I wanted to immediately talk about this question from Maya about Tarek Skubal and the Tigers. So we had some intrigue last night form, and I didn't even realize it was arbitration trading day. But man, this got spicy quick, mainly with this one. Tigers and Skubal likely headed to arbitration hearing with a $13 million gap. Skubal goes out there and throws a $32 million number, and the Tigers file at 19. Now, historically, the Tigers are a lot closer to what has happened historically, even with the top pitchers. The highest arbitration salary ever for a pitcher is $20 million, way back in 2015 for David Price. He had 1 Cy Young at the time. He was coming off of, let's go find out exactly what he was coming off of. Coming off of a very good stretch of time. He's clearly the ace, one of the best pitchers in the world for the Rays at the time. They traded him to Detroit to get out of the way of this situation. So 2014, 2015, what year did he win the Cy? He won the Cy in 2012. So he had 1 Cy and 4 All-Stars headed into that moment in arbitration. He got to 20 million. That is 10 years ago. So off of comps, if they were just comping off of arbitration, this would be probably the most, relevant comp. However, in the CBA, if you have over 5 years of service time, it allows you to make your case to the arbitrators to compare you to everybody in the league. So that opens up Skubal's comps to include the very, very tippy top, the Zach Wheelers of the world, the Max Scherzers of the world, Justin Verlanders of the world. We're talking $43 million per year. So if you're talking $43 million per year, as an actual number that you can comp to, and you're walking in with 2 Cy Youngs back to back, I think he's got a shot of shattering the record even on a settlement. Like if they settle somewhere around 25, that's 5 million over the record. I also think this is a very calculated move in a series of moves by Skubal and Boris here. This is super pertinent here. I think I saw prices amount inflation adjusted today was like 27 million. Okay, so to me that's relevant. But again, he's going to walk in the room Tim Lincecum style with 2 Cy Youngs, probably one in each arm, and put them on the table, and that's going to definitely set the vibe in the room if they go to the hearing. I think it's perfectly reasonable for him to take the stance he has, but he's kind of forcing the Tigers' hand a little bit here to either play ball with him, trade him, whatever. I mean, he's kind of swinging it around a little bit, saying, I'm the man, I've won back-to-back. I've won the back-to-back Cy Youngs. I'm going to go pitching for Team USA. You can't do anything about it. If you have a problem with it, trade me. Because, of course, he'd rather cut to the chase a little faster. He knows that if he gets traded to a certain team, that a negotiation can get worked out. He can get extended way before he has to even probably pitch through all of this season. And if it doesn't happen, he's putting a lot of pressure on the Tigers to make a decision one way or another. Offer him up the big bucks or resign to the fact that they're definitely going to have to trade him and try to get something back, or that they're going to lose him. So ultimately, he's taking a little bit of his career into his own hands here. They're really challenging this arbitration system as a whole. I think no matter what, he's breaking the record, but I also think we might end up going to a hearing because the Tigers have been trial and file the last few years, which means if they go to the hearing, it sets up a very interesting thing. I mentioned $13 million apart. So what's the midway point between 32 and 19? Let's see. 20 to 31. Hold on, what's that? 11, so 5.5 more. So 24 and a half, 25 and a half-ish. So the way that ARB works is when you're in there, there's the midway point gets established, and in the hearing, you have to prove that you're worth $1 above that or $1 below that. And then whoever wins that side of the argument, $1 above, $1 below the midpoint, they get awarded the salary that they filed for. So if Skubal was able to prove that he's worth $1 more than that midpoint, he'll get the $32 million, which would totally shatter the Tigers. They're not willing to pay him $32 million this year. I also think that changes his trade value a little bit, even on the 1-year rental, because now he's worth even more money. So maybe the quality of prospect gets downgraded just a touch. If it goes the other way, he's extremely affordable, $19 million, which is not even at the record. They'd be more than willing to pay him $19 million to pitch. I think that maybe on the 1 year, that might raise the profile of his value a little bit, just a touch. These are all just small little tweaks here and there. But either way, I think this is fascinating. I don't know how you argue against the man right now. Looking at the last 2 years of season for Skubal, and we've gone over it. I mean, you're talking back-to-back almost identical years, 6.4 WAR, 6.5 WAR, back-to-back Cy Youngs, made every start both years, damn near 200 innings. I mean, just incredible. Even finished really high in the MVP. Now, position players have been rewarded much more handsomely in salary arbitration. I believe some of the numbers are here. Yeah, Soto has the overall record, which is 31 million. Shohei got 30 million. In his final year, and Vlad 28.5. So he's obviously in that class of player overall, but the precedent isn't there. I think this is where that little quirk I talked about being over 5 years of service time really makes a big difference. Now he can go ahead and compare himself to the top earning pitchers in the sport. So if you're the Tigers, what do you do here? Do you just immediately offer the midpoint and try to avoid the messiness of the hearing? Do you dig in and say, we're going to go to the hearing? I think this is tricky. I think this is tough. I think this is a very interesting predicament to be in. And also from an aspect of precedent, the highest raise ever was DeGrom, who got a $9.6 million raise after winning his Cy Young in 2018. So even if you took a $9.6 million raise, or somewhere in that ballpark off of Skubal's salary from last year, it only gets him to right around 20. So he's looking for a much bigger raise. So it's not only a unprecedented number in terms of for a pitcher, but also for Rays. So he has some things working against him in terms of history, but I also think this is as good a chance as any to go ahead and try to challenge the system. I'm sure Boris has pushed this pretty hard. He loves nothing more than to shake shit up. And if they're successful, it'll set a really nice runway for other pitchers to get paid more money and kind of bring that floor up for everybody else. So I'm very intrigued by this. I did not know that it was going to get this spicy. Honestly, I didn't even know that the date was coming up. But arbitration is a crazy game, and that's the most notable. That's the most notable, player that exchanged filing figures. Here are the others: Reed Detmers, Isaac Paredes, Yennier Diaz, Eric Lauer, Dylan Lee. These ones are more typical. It's a $200,000 gap between, Dylan Lee and the Braves. Sometimes you see these with relievers. They're kind of like, man, you've been wearing me out. I've been basically your ace reliever for a few years, and you're going to quibble over a couple $100,000 for me. And you dig in a little bit. I remember wanting to dig in on the one time that I went to ARB. We ended up settling anyway, but that initial offer can be such a low ball that you can't help but feel offended at times by it. Here's probably the other more high profile one, William Contreras. He filed just below 10 million at 9.9, and the team filed at 8.75. So that's a pretty substantial gap. Well over $1 million. So they might go to trial there. We'll see how that goes. Foucher, another reliever who probably felt undervalued. Bryce Miller, Cade Cavalli, Keegan Aiken, Kyle Bradish. That's an interesting one since he was hurt for most of the year. Edwin Uceta, Tyler Stevenson, Graham Ashcraft. Chris Bubich is a pretty sizable one. That's a full $1.5 million between the Pasquatch and the Royals as well. There's the Skubal, obviously, and then this is another one that's pretty interesting is Joe Ryan. I feel like Joe Ryan is sort of in a similar spot than Skubal, although with a little bit less service time, in that he's playing for USA as well. I think he would probably like to kind of force a trade to an extension type of destination as well. Although, I think that's why sometimes you choose to be a little more combative with the team to try to force them to make a decision on you at times, especially as a pitcher, because, anything can happen physically as a pitcher. So you got to try to lock it in while you can. And Joe Ryan's coming off of, his best year. He made all 30 starts, pitched 171 innings, made his first All-Star team. He's on that upward trajectory. They do have him for 2 more years of control. So I don't know, maybe he's not super stoked at the idea of playing for a team that, is maybe in a little bit of a transition ownership-wise and stuff like that. So that's another example. And when I talk about trial and file, what that basically means is in the past, these filing numbers would come out and teams would always be open to negotiating all the way up until they really got into the room. And I think even the quote-unquote trial and file teams, they still reserve the right to settle at any time. But generally what the trial and file tries to do is scare the player into not being as aggressive with their number, with the threat being, if you don't agree to a salary that we like before the filing date, then we're going all the way to the hearing and you're going to have to deal with that. And we're comfortable with it and you have to be comfortable with it. And it kind of pushes the player to decide whether they're ready for that or not. That's how most teams do it now. They try to bully you a little bit in this fashion. And we all know that, I don't know if you guys know, but arbitration can be very, very, it can be very combative in the room. So ultimately, I think that's the biggest thing. Arbitration gets nasty. I don't know if getting him on, I think the only way to get him on your good side is to pay him. So, we talked a little bit also in my Substack last night, not my Substack, my Discord a little bit last night about the fact that Skubal's also on this like Detroit tour. He's been going to all the games. He's trying to like really get a lot of fan will on his side. I think it's all part of the same strategy. You want to get the public opinion on your side. Like, let's just pay the man. So when it comes down to a nasty negotiation, the fans are a little bit more on your side of it. I don't know. It's intriguing for a guy who feels like he's out the door to go around and kind of claim Detroit as his city this offseason is an interesting move. And I'm wondering how this all plays out. All right, let me go through here real quick. Can I please discuss my experience in negotiating contracts? So in terms of ARB, I only went through it one time. Guess it was after 2014. Had back-to-back good years. Had moved up on the pecking order. I was probably the 8th inning pitcher at that point. I think that, I remember looking at the comps and realizing I wasn't going to get paid what I wanted to get paid anyway. And then yet the offer was still very low ball. I think they offered me 1. I ended up settling for 1.3. I was willing to go to trial, but ultimately it wasn't enough money to fight about. And I wasn't in the position to kind of take a stand and experiment it. I wanted to lock it in and keep moving. That next year I knew I had a shot at closer. I wanted to remain I wanted to keep good relations with the team. I remember I got married that year. I still went to Fan Fest right after that. We made a lot of effort to keep the relations good with the other side, but not every player does that, and they're often in a different negotiating situation. So mine wasn't really big. After that, I ended up signing an extension through my Tommy John rehab. So I don't really have any other arbitration stories that relate to me personally, but it does feel like a huge deal for the player to finally get to this moment, and you do feel like a raise is coming, and all of a sudden you're fighting with your club a little bit. So it's a big moment. It's exciting, but also teaches it's your first taste, especially that first year where you're at 4+ years is your first taste of the business side. And it's really no way around that. You're going to learn it one way or another at some point. So, it can be a little jarring if you take it personally, which a lot of players do, for sure. All right, what else we got here? Yeah, we still do this sometimes, not every club, but it's still around sometimes. Just a good camaraderie thing, crapping on each other, policing the clubhouse a little bit. Well, the hearing's going to be set for sometime in spring training, so they'll have plenty of time to settle. But often, I don't know if Detroit is a full-on file and trial team. If they are, then there's no negotiation. They're going to the hearing. But I have a feeling there'll be some negotiation because I don't think either side really wants to lose this one. I don't think the Tigers would want to pay 32, and I don't think that Skubal would want to only earn 19. I feel like they'll find common ground here, but they're going to argue over it for a bit, I would imagine, because Detroit doesn't want to be the team to set the precedent either, making him go way higher. So, how much pressure does getting that money put weigh on performance? So it's funny. I was at dinner with LeMahieu a while ago. We were just talking about kind of psychologically how baseball players are always kind of year to year, and especially the best ones, they never really get too far ahead of that mindset. So at first, it's like get in the big leagues, get established, get through the years of 0 to 3 control, get to 0 to 6. Get to 6, get to free agency. Now you've gotten paid. Then if you are a prideful player and you care about delivering value on the team that just basically changed your life, then yeah, you do feel a little bit of pressure, but it's really the pressure's no different than it was before. Like you always have to reprove it all the time in baseball, and the earlier they get used to that, the better. The more you're conditioned to just always have the foot down on the gas, to always be finding 1% better here, 2% better there. I think that's the right mindset. There are some people, though, that 100% take their foot off the gas when they're paid, even if it's subconscious. And I think that is ultimately the thing you'd have to worry about the most. Either that or somebody who's going to be bogged down by the pressure of living up to a huge contract in a big pressure market. That's really reserved for the tippy top. But there are way worse things in life than dealing with the pressure of living up to like a $200 million contract, because you have $200 million. So that kind of comes with the territory, and you shouldn't sign it if you're not willing to at least accept that challenge, in my mind. Do you wish that they could award a salary in the middle? No, not really. I like the way it is. I think ultimately this is the best way to go about it. But I also, yesterday, somebody in the Discord had an interesting question about, are there any teams that are known to be better at this than others? And what's interesting is no. More often than not, the teams and the players will win about the same amount of these. And if it ever gets skewed too far one way or the other, one of the sides will usually fire that neutral arbitrator. So usually it's the owner's side has one arbitrator appointed, the player's side has one arbitrator appointed, and then there's a neutral one that's agreed upon. And if the needle gets swung too far either way in a given offseason, that guy gets replaced. So really, it usually ends up kind of in a neutral area, which kind of makes this whole process kind of BS in my mind in a lot of ways. Like not really being judged on its merits, but more just trying to balance everything out all the time and job preservation and things like that. And I don't like that. So oftentimes as a player, I would look at, like, if I had my hearing date set, but it was on the back end, like I would want my hearing date set as far back as possible so I could see what the early results of the ARB hearings ahead of me were. And if the team was like had a big lead, like they have 1, 3, or 4, then I'd be like, ooh, let's go to the hearing because it's probably going to shift back in the player's direction here. And if I'd gone the other way, I probably wouldn't like my chances as much. And that has nothing to do with the cases. That's just historically, it tends to end up about 50-50 going to the team or to the players. So I don't wish they could award a salary in the middle. No, to answer your question, I like the process of actually fighting for and arguing about it. The thing I don't like is the lack of transparency in how the decisions get made. Nobody ever explains it. The decision's just levied and then it's all moved on from. I also say something about your ARB1 compounds to ARB2 and so on. Yeah, so Uceta is an example of a guy who is an ARB1, I believe, right now. Let me look at his service time. Yeah, 2 years, 150. So he's a Super 2. So this is his first time. So yeah, he's only arguing over 300K, to your point, Z Brody. But yeah, if he gets it, that compounds into a higher starting point into the next RBer. So even minimal things early on are worth fighting for in some circumstances. But, ultimately, I do think that it's just so tough when you don't really have a sense of like why things are decided. You know that they're based off traditional statistics and comps, but oftentimes you could be in the room and you could think you wipe the floor with the other side and still lose. And I think that's hard to parse through sometimes we don't have an explanation. He's doing great. He'll be back mid-season. So you mentioned most teams operate on a file and trial MO. What effect on team reputation does it have for players? Does it matter for those already in free agency? Honestly, like by the time you get to free agency, you're not thinking about the ARB side of things anymore. So really none, especially when most teams are trial and file and trial now. So if you're looking to like avoid a team, you're mad about that, you're going to have a lot less teams to pick from. And as we've seen in this free agency, even if you're an absolute stud player, I mean, you're begging for 3 teams to be in your market. Everybody thinks, oh, there's 30 teams that are going to want somebody, but it always ends up being a couple. And you don't want that to whittle down any further. So makes sense. Oh yeah, and I understand 300K is a lot. I'm just saying relative to the the finances of the game, it's a relatively low number there. All right, I think let me check my yeah, Troy's already here. So we're going to go ahead and bring him in a minute. And then we'll chat with Troy Johnston for a bit, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more arbitration after that. So I will be right back. And when I come back, we'll have Rockies first baseman Troy Johnston. So bear with me for a moment. Let's grab you real quick. Hold on one sec. Copy solo link. All right, you should pop in here. All right, there we go.
Look at me, dark like the Northwest. I like it.
So yeah, hey man, thanks for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Adam, I'll do anything for you. Once a Toro, always a Toro.
Yes, sir. They're in the middle of the round robin right now. I know that you just got back. You were down there for a little bit. Did you play through the postseason last year when you were down there?
I did. I played just about every single game you possibly could in the Lightem season, except for the game 7 that everybody talks about, where Junior Caminero hit this crazy home run that it took him 5 minutes to get around the bases. I was on a flight home. I needed to be there for my my wife's baby shower.
Well, there you go. There are some things that are more important than winter ball for
Yes.
sure. But
Yes.
yeah, I actually remember because after I left, I didn't watch much, but then when the postseason came and they got to the 7-game series, I definitely dialed in for that. And I remember thinking when I was shagging in that ballpark that was too far for anybody to go over that batter's eye, and then he goes like 100 feet over the batter's eye. So that was something.
It was something very impressive. I've never seen anybody do. Of course, I've only seen videos of it, but the baseball's down there. You know how it flies. It's inconceivable how a ball could go that far.
Yeah, no, and I've studied him since because I was like, man, like clearly it's a special level of bat speed and all that. He's got a lot going on in the swing, but he still finds a way to be a little more consistent than people with that much movement. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, really happy to have you. Obviously, we've had some recent action in your baseball career. Now a member of the Rockies, longtime member of the Marlins organization. So, how did that go down? And what are your thoughts on this upcoming year and your excitement level of being in Denver?
So I got a funny story for you. I'll lead with that. When we were with the Marlins and we were actually in Denver, I share the same agency as Hunter Goodman. And so we ended up going to a concert. We ended up going to the Red Rocks and seeing the Red Clay Strays. It was unbelievable. It was so much fun.
Hell yeah.
Can't thank my agency enough for taking me out. But we get to the ballpark, we get to Coors. I'm like, okay, this is pretty nice. It's a little colder, whatever. It's September. My wife, after the game, comes up to me and goes, I love it here. I almost bought a hat for the Rockies. And I'm like, you can't do that. We play for the Marlins. You can't just be wearing Rocky stuff around when we play for the other team. And then about 2 months later, I get a call right after the World Series, say, hey, we need to make some roster changes. We're going to put you on waivers. And I say, okay. There's a lot of left-handed hitting outfielders. They're looking for a new first baseman. I kind of knew what was going on, just like a lot of baseball players can see things. So I get the call, put on waivers. They say, good news, you were immediately picked up by the Rockies. And I turned to my wife as, I'm on speakerphone, and I'm like, how crazy is this life? That you talked about the one place you wanted to be. You were like, well, it would be so cool to play in Denver, so cool to play at Coors Field, and now we're with them.
It's funny how life works like that. Like it can be, you don't even know, like you kind of plant the seed somewhere in the mind and then it just ends up coming out in reality. I had a similar one with the Rockies. I used to use random baseball teams as like passwords for things, like email passwords, like when I was in college. And at one point, Rockies was one of them. And then that ended up being like the team I was with the longest. So
Yeah.
it's not the exact same, but it's interesting how sometimes like you don't even realize that your whole life's about to shift, but maybe there's some sort of foreshadowing in there that does exist.
It is absolutely crazy. And I actually heard, and I didn't know if this was true, so I didn't reach out to you, but were you up for a position with the Rockies earlier this year?
Somewhat. I went and talked with the owner. Gave him my thoughts. Truthfully, I think they've done a really good job. I like the moves that they have made, modernizing the organization. I know a ton of great people there. It's been a tough couple of years, obviously, but I loved it. I had a great relationship with ownership and a lot of the people that kind of run the joint. So, I was able to go in and give my thoughts. Given that I had the 7 years of experience, there was some talk about maybe taking over a leadership on the pitching side. It's not something I was really interested in right now. But overall, like I love the Rockies. I'm pleased with a lot of the moves they made. I think there was a lot of uncertainty headed into this offseason, but I think they're going to be headed in the right direction. Just signed a veteran starting pitcher to a 1-year deal, which we haven't seen in forever, and Michael Lorenzen. And I'm curious how you guys are going to
Michael
do.
Lorenzen, nice. Okay.
Yeah, that just happened. So he's going to be able to, eat some more innings. And obviously on the pitching side of things, it's always different there in terms of just what it takes and maybe what success looks like. But there's no doubt that it's a huge home field advantage for the club, and that's kind of always been the method to make the playoffs: dominate a course and kind of survive it on the road. And I think they're taking steps to maybe outfit the club, with players like yourself that fit really well at course. Guys are going to put the ball in play, spray the ball all over the park. There's a lot of grass out there, as you might know. So a very good place to swing the bat if you're going to be willing to hit some line drives.
Yep. So in that sense, I know that you asked me to be on the interview. I have a question for you. You being in Denver, how long were you with the Rockies?
7 years.
7 years. That is enough time to really, really get to know Denver.
Yeah.
What do I need to know about Denver? I've been in Florida for the last 6 years, 7 years. What do I need to know about Denver? What do I need to know about the area and like maybe some good food spots?
Sure. Yeah. So like on a lifestyle level, it's top 5 in the big leagues. Easy. Your drive to the field from wherever you want to live, and there's a lot of options in Denver. The city is very sprawling. There's a
Mhm.
lot of room to expand there. So there's a lot of good places to live. The drive in is easy. They take care of the families really well. The parking lot is all that stuff's convenient. Yada yada yada. So what drives the Rockies experience, I would say, is lower downtown, the area where the field is, surrounded by bars, restaurants. It's very lively at night. It's a very festive atmosphere. There's a lot of good downtown restaurants. But ultimately, when we started a family, we ended up moving into the Cherry Creek area, which is about 15 minutes away, right up Spear Road. Maybe it's got a different name than Road, but Spear. And it's just like a little more of like a Mr. Rogers type of neighborhood. There's an outdoor mall, indoor mall. Oh, my wife started writing in the chat, no pasta, 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 RIP. That was our lunch spot that we used to love. But really, Denver has a ton to offer in terms of food. It's actually, especially like Mexican food, tons of Mexican influence. But they have really everything you would want food wise. The weather is great. It's not too humid. It's pretty dry. Obviously, you have to deal with that. But in the summer, it makes it a lot more mild. The thing that we love the most is what the off days have to offer. On an off day at home in Denver, you can hit the mountains. It's about 10, 15 degrees cooler. Those mountain towns, those ski towns, are even nicer in the summer. They're just one of the best. It's just one of the best places you could ever have for an off day. So it's a really good vibe with that. Beyond that, Red Rocks, you've already hit that. You already know about that. It's definitely a Broncos town, but the Rockies is right there as well. Big fan support. A lot of people that love baseball. You can go see Garden of the Gods. I mean, lots of outdoorsy stuff. If you're into outdoorsy stuff, that's kind of the sweet spot of Denver. But you're gonna have no problem finding food of all different types and lots of things to do for sure. And Red Rocks is right up there near the top of the list for sure.
That's fantastic. That's so good to hear because, of course, we're coming to a brand new organization. We don't know much about Denver, so that's awesome to hear.
It's dope. I mean, so Denver's down in the valley, but when you head like east, I believe, is when you kind of get into the mountains pretty quick. You get into like those foothills where Red Rocks is, and then you continue. Vail's only like another 45, 50 minutes from there. And then, I mean, you name it, you can do it outdoors. Obviously, as a player, you don't want to like spend your whole off day like being exhausted or whatever, doing hikes and things like that. But we did quite a bit of that. My wife was always pushing me to whitewater raft all the time. Although I was like, hey, like I gotta like stay healthy out here. So we did that, when we were done. But we enjoyed it a ton. One interesting thing is the airport's kind of low key far. It's like 35, 40 minutes from the city. On the positive side, you can drive your own car there and park it. So that's nice. You get off the flight, you get right in your own vehicle. That's nice. You don't have to take the bus back.
Oh,
So that's a nice little perk.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. Oh my goodness. Because let me tell you, when I, as a rookie duty, when we got into Denver, I didn't sit in my seat much on that long 40-minute drive. So,
That can be in my
I'm really
history, in my experience, because I first was with the Cardinals. First time we went to Denver, I was on the Cardinals. In my experience, and with other teams I've gone there, that can be one of the booziest,
Yes.
loosest player bus rides in the league. You know, it's a pretty long flight,
You
likely.
know it. Yes.
A lot of turbulence usually coming in because of the light air. Then you land and you got 35 more minutes, and those beers are getting consumed. So it can be really fun, though.
You know it. You got it.
So
That's awesome.
yeah. So I mean, I'm just reading some of these comments. Cherry Cricket is actually like a really good spot in Cherry Creek. They have incredible burgers, kind of like a bar vibe. Really good after the games. Me and LeMahieu, that was one of our spots. We would always go at night, kind of pick up from there. People are really hitting me on the comments here. Never need to leave Cherry Creek. Watch out for the Rocky Mountain oysters, which, yeah, I never tried those, but that's
I've heard about those. Yes,
that's definitely a thing. Best backyard in the country, Rocky Mountain National Park.
Okay.
What else? There was a taco spot that I liked, which is called Pinche Tacos, which I used to like. Again, there's a lot of good Mexican food, so you'll have no problem with that. And then, okay, we get into this talk too. The altitude is a real thing. So, if I were to give one piece of advice of just handling the altitude, is just respect it. Like, obviously, you're not going to notice it much day 1, day 2 necessarily playing, but long homestands can definitely grind the legs down a little more, especially if you're playing the outfield and you got to take a lot of long runs and runs back in between every half inning. It will catch up to you. So one thing that we learned over the years was not to bury the hole too deep physically when you're at home. Do a lot of that work on the road when you can recover a lot better. And then when you're at home, just try to kind of play for the tie as much as you can so you can be out there, getting your cuts in. And just don't do anything to get in the way of that, basically, is what I would advise.
I'm learning, as much as you asked me, like I said, you asked me to be on your show. I'm learning more about this than anything. That's great. Because for me, I mean, I live in Washington. I've been up to the mountains, but I do understand that Denver is different because the whole area is elevated.
Yeah.
So
you feel it with your sleep. Like you feel it with your sleep a lot. Like,
okay.
So like when I would come back in from the road, I mean, I pretty much didn't drink in the season anyway. That was like a decision I made at some point. But it was pretty mandatory for me. No drinking on the way back into Denver. Make sure I'm hydrated. Make sure I'm ahead of that. And that's for everywhere, but it's even more so there. And then I had a hard time sleeping usually the first night or two. But I would sometimes go get an IV on my own. And then I would take naps at the field. Rockies have an incredible nap room. I know as a young player, sometimes maybe the culture is hard to maybe partake in that, but ultimately I would try to find a way to bring that into your routine because even catching like a 20, 30-minute nap before the game can definitely help you recuperate and get your mind right and just make sure you're in the right, headspace and body space to go out there and perform. And it seems to be a little more important there where recovery is at a premium for sure. So there's some nuance, but at the end of the day, it's a great place to play, 100%.
I love it.
All right, so you made your debut last year with the Marlins. Pretty long-waited debut. I know that you had considered last year maybe being your last year playing, and then things work out. You play well, you get called up. How was your call-up experience? How was the first, little trip through the big leagues? And did it reinvigorate kind of your drive to keep going here?
Yes to all of it. I think the call up to the big leagues really was, it was surreal. It was something that I didn't expect, really. I expected to go into free agency and be a minor league free agent and just kind of go that route for another year or so. What I was really looking at, though, is I got the call in July, and my manager calls me in AAA. He's asking me, and he pretty much calls and he does this thing where he tries to be nonchalant. He has this long story about his first time being called up, where the coach picks up the phone, goes, "Hey, you're going to the big leagues," and hangs up. And he's like, "I thought it was going to be a little bit more romantic, a little bit more dramatic," and so that's how he likes to call people up. He makes it more, "Hey, how's the family? Are you doing okay? Are you healthy?" And I had to stop him in between that, and I said, "It's a Monday night. I just made spicy rigatoni. I have a full pot ready to go. If you're calling me about what I think you're calling me about, you need to tell me right."
Yeah.
He says, "Hey, Troy, I know it's been a while, but you deserve it. you know, you're going to the big leagues. And of course, me and my wife were crying with how much we've struggled and how much we've been through. And you know, it was a long time, and I understand that, you know, not everybody can be the 20-year-old, the 19-year-old in the big leagues and, you know, have that long career. But for me, it was meant that everything was worth it, all the struggle, all the, you know, all the hard times, the good times, the travel, all those kind of things. But I think really winter ball when we played together was kind of restarted that for me a little bit. It taught me, you know, there's more to baseball than just playing for yourself. You know, you're trying to win, you're trying to be a good teammate, you're trying to, you know, there's different things like that that of course in the minor leagues you sometimes forget because it's just me, me, me. How do I get to the big leagues? How do I make more money? How do I do all this kind of thing? And so finally getting that call up, it taught me again, kind of like in winter ball, you know, how to win, how to be a good teammate, how to go about my business, how to do my job right. And of course, my job was very cut and dry. I platooned and I hit against righties, and um, I played outfield, left and right. I played first base. I DH'd. I did kind of everything that they asked me to do. And you know, my short time in the big leagues showed me a lot of what it takes to get there and what it takes to stay. So it's been interesting, and I've really actually thought about it. I got to thank the Marlins for everything that they did because they're doing some really, really cool things in how they're training and how they're going about pitching, they're going about hitting. It's very new age, very ahead of the game in a sense of some teams have already started it and now they're kind of getting there and you can see the difference.
Yeah, I
So
have I
it's
have tons of questions to ask about some of that because
please.
obviously the
Um,
Marlins have been on the cutting edge of trying some things. You know, not only on the backfields down in Jupiter, but even at the big league level,
mhm.
calling pitches from the dugout. Um, so we've had our opinion from the outside, but obviously from the inside, you've seen some of the stuff and how it's helped some guys, you know, maybe develop over time. What would you say? I guess that's too general of a question, what I was about to ask, but I guess I'm basically curious of some of the stuff that you've seen them try to implement over the last year or two. What was some of the more interesting things, and what's stuff that you maybe think that we'll see other teams adopt in the future?
So I'll say some of the interesting things first. One of the most interesting things I saw was at the lower levels. I think it was double A down. They would do live at bats, and the relieving pitchers throw after the game. So they pretty much show up to the field at 6 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. They stretch, they do whatever they need to do. They're probably not in that game that night, I think, or maybe they are. I don't know, but either way, if you pitch or you don't pitch, you throw your bullpen, throw your live at bat after the game. So I mean, guys are there until 11, 12 o'clock. In AAA, we kind of were more on a big league schedule where that didn't really happen. A lot of guys did everything traditionally before the game, everything like that. So in AAA and the big leagues, things were a lot different than at the lower levels where, you know, of course, in AAA and the big leagues, guys have their routines. They come from different organizations. They kind of
Mm.
have their thing where at the lower levels, you can kind of implement what you want to implement because they don't really know any better yet.
Well, before we move on to anything else, that intrigued me right
Yeah.
away because as a
Mhm.
relief pitcher myself, a huge part of the staying healthy game, something that I felt like I got really good at over time, really involves self-regulating your catch play. And oftentimes it's hard to do that if you don't know if you're going to pitch or not in that game. So a lot of times guys, do their catch play before the game, like every organization does. And there's varying degrees of intensity during that time period. And then sometimes you run into a situation where maybe you threw a little bit too much working on something, and then on top of that, you also pitch in the game. And now the next day, maybe you're not as ready to go on a back to back, but the other team doesn't maybe understand. The team's like, well, you only pitched 16 pitches or whatever in the game, but maybe you burned it out a little too much in catch play. So this is a strategy that we used to use a little bit on our own at times too. If you were in a situation where you didn't feel like you really needed to practice, um, and you weren't sure exactly how much to practice, but you knew you were available for that game that night, just get ready to pitch that night. And if you pitch, great. And if you don't, then you can pick and choose how much you want to throw after the game, right? Because now you know you have a whole night's sleep ahead of you and another afternoon until the next game. So in a lot of ways, it makes a lot of sense. Does it keep you there a lot longer? Yes. Is it more of a
more of a commitment to be there longer and keeps everybody kind of there past when they want to be there. Yeah, but I also think there's some merit to that. There's definitely some merit to that because it keeps guys a little bit more cognizant of the relationship between how much they should be throwing and how much they are throwing. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. I also think the other interesting thing to put on top of that is a lot of what we were doing, we weren't actually throwing bullpens. So there wasn't like a catcher in the bullpen. You're working on a pitch, you're working on a pitch. All of it was live at bats. So like you pretty much warm up and you throw your bullpen, whether you throw your first bullet off the mound is probably, like a warm up pitch before the inning. You probably get 7 warm up pitches, then you're like, I'm
83,
good.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then, some guys will ramp it up, some guys won't, but, they'll work on their pitches. Maybe they're working on a slider that day. You have 4 different batters come out for a live BP, and you're just pretty much ripping sliders, trying to look at stuff, and you're pretty much just throwing your bullpen as a live at bat.
Well, I think that also makes sense on some level too, because ultimately, when you're facing a batter, you're practicing different types of executions than you would be if you're just throwing a bullpen. I don't know a lot of guys that are mature enough to work on throwing chase pitches with no batter in there, but if you have a batter in there who might be swinging, maybe there's a room to work on that. You can throw, and then you can also get feedback from that hitter who's technically your teammate. Hey, why were you able to lay off that pitch? What did it look like, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're getting some of the feedback that's really hard to get, which is what the effect on things are on batters. I think as a pitcher, you're mostly guessing, but until you're in the game, it's just that, it's a guess. Now I do think that makes sense. Now on the downside of that, I could maybe see, maybe there's some intensity concerns there. But I also think from a team perspective, they don't mind guys practicing at a little bit more close to game intensity. I think they feel like they get a little more juice out of the squeeze that way. So that's another intriguing one as well. How does that work though? Like, so after you have as a position player, are you like on a sign up sheet or like a rotation to like face guys post game?
So that one we did in the big leagues and in AAA, but we actually did those pregame, because we were on a different schedule. But yes, with the position players, that would be postgame. A lot of it was guys that weren't playing that day or weren't starting. And so if you weren't starting, or maybe you wanted to see, let's say you got Ryan Weathers throwing a bullpen, he's coming back. Um, Maybe the guys that platoon lefties come and hit off of him a little bit more, even if they're playing that day. Or if you're not playing that day, you come, you hit, you do whatever you need to do. But there's probably 3 or 4 guys. A lot of guys did not come out. I never saw guys come out and take live BPs unless they needed to or were specifically asked. But usually a lot of the same guys were taking live BPs.
What was the buy-in from the pitchers in the big league level this year on some of that? Like, were there some guys who were like, "No, I'd much rather throw my bullpen in a controlled setting," or everybody was kind of bought in?
I think everybody was bought in. I think there was a little bit of an underlying, just like any other job. They're trying to push something, and if you're not bought in, we'll see you later. You're probably gonna not be with the team much longer. So it's either you buy in and you try it our way, and if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Or if you flat out don't want to try it our way, like good luck. Really the only person I never saw have a live BP and just have a bullpen was Sandy Alcantara.
That's what I would have
But
guessed.
he just did it. He did it on the field. He did it in the setting. He just didn't have a hitter. That was it.
That's what I would have guessed because a lot of times when you're a veteran player, you kind of get set in your ways, and I've been a member of some teams that have tried some stuff. Actually, when I was the Rockies in 2012, we went to a piggyback system. So the starter would have 75 pitches, and then there was 3 of us relievers that would had 55 or so on back of them, kind of in a rotation. And it worked. We actually had a better record with this style in the second half that year when they implemented it. However, the starting pitchers kind of hated it because if they were rolling 75 pitches in, that was it. They were kind of on their way out. So there was definitely pushback. But again, most of the guys pushing back are veterans and are more kind of set in their ways. One advantage the Marlins do have is it's mostly younger players, Sandy being a notable exception. So yeah, I think if you're gonna try some things at the highest level, this would be the type of club that makes sense. You'll be able to kind of inject this in there and say, yeah, like this is what we're doing, and if not, we'll find somebody else that will do it. And honestly, we do think this is going to be beneficial to you. So I think it makes sense on some level for certain guys to buy in that circumstance for sure.
Well, you said something interesting. You said it's interesting that the Marlins are wanting to do this to get to the closest point to the game. So they actually ran us through a presentation, at least on the hitting side. I don't know about the pitching side, but they ran us through a presentation and they said, hey, name all of the drills you can do in hitting. And, we name off tee, we name off machine, we name off front flips, we side flips, arm, mixed arm, traject, eye pitch, different stuff like that. And they pretty much put it in a list and they said, here's our challenge point. Here's the game. What is the closest thing we can get to the game? And so we listed everything. The tee is probably the farthest thing you can get from the game. It's a stationary ball. It's not moving. You can hit it pretty much wherever you want. And then you have traject and you have eye pitch and you have angle machine and you have all these kind of things that are really difficult. And you're probably going to succeed 20% of the time, 10% of the time. Whereas with the tee, you're probably going to succeed 100% of the time. So they talked about how close can we get to the challenge point in our training to make it as close to the game as possible so that when you go out to, just like anybody said, practice like you play, how close can we get to a game-like feel in our training, in our practice, in our pregame work, so that when we go into the game, we're fully prepared. It's not, hey, I'm going to take a couple rounds of flips and, it's coming in at 30 miles an hour underhand and I'm good. No problem. I'm ready to see a 96 mile an hour sinker.
Yeah.
It's very different. And so I do understand that the Marlins did have, and maybe this was more on a personal thing than it was the actual training aspect. But I do understand that they had a lot of oblique injuries, because it was a lot of swinging. It was a lot of, hey, we're not taking tee, we're not taking flips, go right into overhand, go right into machine, go right into different things. And so that takes a toll on the body if your hips aren't prepared, if your body's not prepared, if you're not ready to swing at a full intent with a ball coming at you even at 80 miles an hour, you're probably gonna hurt an oblique, you're probably gonna hurt a hip, you're probably gonna hurt your back, something like that. And there's some give and take, whether it was on the organization, whether it was on the players. For me, you have to be prepared to swing the bat, and if you're not prepared to swing the bat, then you're doing yourself a disservice. But I did see that was kind of a drawback from how close can we get to the challenge point. There really wasn't a warm-up. We're not really doing that. You do your warm-up in the weight room, and then you come into the cage and you should be ready to go.
Yeah, it's just such a departure from what I was recommended to do when I first got into pro ball, being with the Cardinals. You talk to the veterans, and it's all about saving your bullets for the game, whether that's your swings in the cage, whether that's your throws in pregame. That way you can have maximum ready for the game. Now, I do think scientifically it makes a lot of sense. Practice close to the game as you can. Make practice hard. That's the only way you're going to get better, is by making yourself uncomfortable and challenging yourself. I think one of the initial roadblocks was nobody wants to get blown up by major league balls on their hands 10 minutes before the game. I think once they solve that problem to a little bit of those softer balls that they have now that you can still put a lot of the same movement on with the traject and other things like that, I think that all of a sudden that was kind of an unlock. Players were like, oh, I'm not going to blow up my hands anymore. I can go ahead and face this pitcher and face this machine or this angle and take on this challenge, and this will make me a little bit more prepared for my first at bat when I step in there against a major leaguer and the lights are on and he's throwing 94 with cut or whatever. So I mean, I get it all, but it's very fascinating. Even me, as my career went on, I really adopted this high-low model in terms of training, where it was like if I was going to throw, I really threw. Like I threw as hard as I could in an effort, to your point, to get as close to game-like as possible. So I know how my pitches feel like coming out of my hand. And I can really see the actual action on them. The seams will actually catch because I'm throwing with some real intent, and I'm not training any in-between bad habits. Like you don't go out on the mound and kind of throw 60%. You know what I mean? Like you go out there and throw 100%. So if I was training, I would go all out for the most part. And if I wasn't, I would go full recovery mode. Like I wouldn't do any half measure. I wouldn't go out there and lob the ball around in an effort to make each rep really valuable. So in that way, we kind of ended up in that place anyway, but I find it fascinating that the team has gone ahead and prioritized that type of training. And I'm wondering if you saw it work to great effect. Like, did you see, besides yourself and some of your teammates, did you see some gains from this process?
I think it's a little bit of a mental battle. I think you have to mentally be prepared and bought in for something like this, because if you again are set in your ways and all of a sudden, hey, you're oh, I like the caption. I love Troy. Thank you. um, I think you have to be mentally prepared and you have to be mentally bought in, because if you don't, then you're gonna think, just like anything else, I don't like this. This doesn't work for me. I'm struggling during the games. This is not gonna help me. Whereas if you go into something like this and you're like, okay, if I do this and I actually get better, this is something that's gonna work. If I don't do this and I take maybe something that is gonna get me better, maybe it fully doesn't work. Maybe this little part works. Just like a lot of people, there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of, it one thing doesn't work for everybody. But I do think that there were people that got better. I do think there was people that got worse. Um, I just
That's
it
probably that's probably true for
yes,
anything. But I was
yes.
curious if you I mean, just because if nobody was getting better, that would be a red flag. But if you're seeing it and you're like, "Oh, like having to rise to this type of challenge really helps this type of player," then yeah, there's a place for this in the game, because ultimately, what is player development about? It's about preparing guys to be successful major leaguers and to deal with the
Yeah.
challenges they're going to face. So I understand it, and it's interesting. It's intriguing. I know Gabe Kapler drives a lot of it, right? And now that
Mhm.
he's over there now, he's always been open to new ideas. Peter Bendix, and now obviously there's Clayton McCullough over there. So there's been a lot of turnover, but they're willing to try some new things, and they have the ability to do it. Um, Along these lines, you got to the big leagues this year. You faced a lot of tough pitchers, I'm sure, because the big leagues is full of them. What was some of the differences that you felt maybe a month in? Of how a big league, like the kind of the difference between facing a big league pitching staff and maybe a AAA pitching staff.
I think the biggest difference was information. So a lot of the information for me was, pitchers. You guys get the same information that I get about my hitting. It's, does he chase? What pitches does he struggle with? What, things like that. Where can we throw him? Where's his hot zones? Where's his not? So I would get a lot of those, and I would be like, okay, great. This is where they're going to attack me. This is how they're going to attack me. This is what I need to work on. My first taste in the big leagues, just like anybody else, I tried to do too much. I tried to get out of my zone. I tried to get out of what I was trying to do. And they absolutely outed me. And so if you look at my chase rate on there,
Well,
it was probably
I was
pretty
just
high.
pulling up some early stuff. Like you got about 50% fastball, 50% off speed.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it looked like the success the pitchers had was fastball
Yes.
quite a bit.
And a lot of that was, of course, sometimes, I look for off speed. And, that's just kind of what the situation calls for. You got a runner on second, 2 outs. There's probably not a lot of reason for you to throw four fastballs in the zone.
Yeah.
You're probably going to throw different stuff. You're probably going to lead with something else. But what was interesting to me was they exposed that right away. Was they would just not throw me strikes, and they would just throw things, borderline pitch, borderline pitch, borderline pitch. Oh, good video.
Yeah. First career
Better pin
dinger
drop.
right here.
Yeah. I
Little
was about
changeup.
50. Yeah, I was about 50 seats short of Ted Williams.
How'd you like playing there? It's pretty cool, huh?
That was a fantastic, fantastic area. I mean, the hotel's great. I loved all of Boston. It's a great place to be. Another changeup.
Don't throw Troy the changeup. He can stay back on it.
Don't throw me the Well, it's 88. It's almost like a fastball at that point.
It's like a power sinker, I guess, at that
A
point.
power sinker.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying. I mean, a lot of these guys, they won't throw pitches. Like in the minors, it's like, hey, I'm working on something. Throw it all the time. You throw it 7 times in a row. You're working on it. Throw it in the zone. Do whatever you need to do. Um, but in the majors, it's like, hey, I'm gonna throw you a ball up at your eyes, up and in, see if you can hit it. I'm going to throw you something low and away. I'm going to throw you something over here, chase, chase, chase. See if you'll swing at it. If you don't swing at it, I'll just walk you. And then, hope for a double play the next pitch. It's not a big deal. Where I think in the minors, they're trying to not walk guys. They're trying to pound the zone, a lot of different stuff like that.
Yeah. First of all, you mentioned sometimes looking for off-speed pitches. Great. It's actually a tremendous idea in the big leagues, because ultimately, the numbers don't lie. The percentage, even though the velocity is higher than ever, the percentage of which we throw those pitches is low, low, low. Everybody and their sister now has some sort of gyro pitch they can spin in there for a strike, and then they're kind of reading the at bat from there. And oftentimes, especially the veterans, one thing I learned over time was you do get all this information, right? But there's a lot of Major League Baseball that's played pitch to pitch to pitch. So it's like, where were you on this pitch? That means this is still available, this is not available. Whereas I think before you get to the big leagues, teams are more interested in the pitchers just optimizing their mix. Like, we want you to throw 50% slider and 45%
Yes.
fastball and sprinkle in some changeups. And the guys are just making sure they're hitting those markers. So as a hitter, maybe it's a little bit easier to predict what might be coming or maybe what the game plan is. Whereas I do think in the big leagues, obviously, if you have a weakness, and that's shown, people are going to attack that first, and they're going to wait for you to adjust to that, and then they're going to pivot really fast. So it's a little bit more of that traditional cat and mouse. And I was curious if you felt that a little bit when you were up there, like, just because a guy has, 100 miles an hour, you might not see it, necessarily, depending on how the at bat progresses. And it almost behooves you as a hitter to not try to play the chasing of the thinking game as much and sort of understand what you can and can't handle and wait for those pitches to appear and don't miss them in a lot of ways. So there's a bunch of ways to go about it, but I'm curious if you felt a little bit more of the cat and mouse in the big leagues than maybe in the minor leagues. I'm curious about that.
Well, I mean, 100%. And you know this more than anybody else, but if you don't understand the cat and mouse game, I feel like baseball gets really hard. If you're just looking for a fastball, you're looking for something over the heart of the plate, a fastball, you're probably not going to get it. And if you miss the one, you're probably not going to get it again. So being adjustable to be able to hit a lot of different pitches and sit on different pitches, like, I don't mind sitting on a changeup. You got, who's the pitcher from the Blue Jays?
Gosman, splitter, yeah.
Gosman throws, you can look up those. I mean, I hit 3 splitters in 3 at-bats because I decided to not swing at his fastball. And so I was like, okay, I'm sitting on this pitch against this guy. You get Helsley, who's got a good cut fastball. I'm going to try to beat it to the spot. I'm going to try to, sauce it out into right field, pull something. There's different guys, different approaches, different styles where, you look at my 4-seam fastball, I probably didn't do very good against that because a lot of the time I probably wasn't looking for it. It was more of like a defense pitch. It was like, okay, here comes a changeup here. Oh, that's a fastball. I'm going to try to foul that off or swing through it.
How hard is that to do? Look for something slow and still be able to foul off a pitch. Is that really
extremely
yeah.
extremely hard? But my whole extremely hard. But my whole approach is I need to be on time for the fastball so that off speed looks really, really slow so that I know that it starts in the right spot. So like, let's take your 25-inch sweeper across. It needs to start almost like at the shortstop, like at the shortstop's head for it to be a strike. Because if it starts down the middle, it's probably hitting me in the knee. And I'm going to swing.
This is something that I show a lot when I break down my videos on here is understanding where pitches have to begin for where they have to finish. And that's a big part of hitting nowadays. Understanding what window you want to see the ball out of. It really helps you make better swing decisions. I think even early in the count, it's maybe even more critical because you're trying to get your A swing off. So you're really looking for something or you're really willing to take something. I think at 2 strikes, obviously it's a little different. Now you're trying to protect the plate, but also not chase. Sometimes the situation dictates you can still swing bigger or whatever, but definitely early in the count. And I try to explain this when I watch a lot of guys hit and pitch is like, well, if this guy's going to get his A swing off, he's probably looking for one thing and one thing only here. And really, it's not the way the viewer realizes. He's not looking like middle away. He's saying, where does the ball have to start to end up middle away? And that's what I'm looking for out of the hand. So as a pitcher, I have to sometimes understand like, oh, the hitter's looking for something to start over here to make his swing decision. How do I use that to my advantage? And I think that's a huge learning curve as well on the pitching side is like understanding how the hitters think about this. But it's intriguing that you look for the off speed. I think it's a great idea. I also think laying in the weeds as a hitter and looking for one thing and being committed to it and being okay looking bad is also a superpower. Because if I'm trying to play the cat and mouse with you, but you refuse, I can't win that way. Then I'm going to make that mistake and you're going to be all over it. So yeah, it's just intriguing to talk to a hitter. going through it for the first time, and you got to face quite a few really, really good guys too, even though they're righties, and that's the
Yes, I
matchup.
did.
You got to face four seam, splitters, cutters, curveballs, everything the big leagues has to offer. I'm sure it's no matter what, it's a little bit of a trial by fire at the beginning for sure.
Yes, it is. And when probably the coolest, and of course you'll know this, but Jonah Tong has an unbelievable fastball.
Yes.
That is when people ask me about, you've seen some good pitchers, who's you face, I got to be there for Jonah Tong's debut, which the Mets did a fantastic job. They did awesome. But he had this crazy fastball.
Yeah, it's got the most
he
hop in
threw
the
me.
league.
It's like 23-0.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And I thought he threw me a fastball at the top of the zone. And it ended up right there. Yes, just like that. I thought it was going to be a top of the zone fastball, and it was at my eyes. And I was like, okay, this is different. He ended up throwing me like a 1-2 or 1-1 fastball over the middle, and I ended up getting a single on it. But he by far had some of the best stuff. I don't think he's one of the guys that I don't think he should throw an off speed in the zone. I think he should strictly be fastballs in the zone, off speed out of the zone, because his changeup has enough to where it'll just kind of throw the timing off, and then he can just drive that fastball right in there. But I think he is going to be a very good pitcher come the next decade.
Had you faced him in the minor leagues at all?
No, never. He jumped really quickly when we played Syracuse earlier in the year. He was not there. I faced like McLean and who was the other Mets guy?
Sproat.
Sproat. Yes, Sproat. I faced those guys.
Yeah, hold on. I'm looking. I can find your game here. Let me just. I'm putzing around here. For some reason, my dugout app's not working, but I can get the game here on the research tool. Pitcher Tong versus Troy Johnston.
He only had 2 at bats. He ran through our lineup pretty good.
So it's funny because a lot of people were asking me. I'll just go back to the previous pitch too. We'll watch the whole at bat. People were asking me about him because he came up and he had some success, but he had some struggles. And I was telling them like, be patient because that fastball's special. Like it's actually has the most ride in the league. Plus he has extension and he's a little bit below on average release height as well. So it's going to play extremely well at the top. And then both of his off-speed pitches are way slower too. So
yes.
There might be some element of control over command in his game, but the challenge of facing a guy with a fastball that you have no choice but to respect because it's so abnormal does make it harder to hit those other pitches. And you were able to be in the box versus him, and you said you noticed right away that fastball played a little bit different. So that speaks a little bit to what we were talking about on our show, that, yeah, it is a special fastball, and that kind of drives the 40% strikeout rate he had in AA this year, which is insane.
That's insane. Yeah. I didn't know that it was 40%. That's a lot.
Yeah, him and Trey Savage, the Blue Jay who pitched in the World Series, those two guys kind of paced the minor leagues last year. Nice swing right there.
Thank you very much.
They paced the minor leagues in strikeout rate, and I think that what makes it obvious to me of kind of the why of that, whereas other people might understand, is it's great stuff, but it's also great deception and weird, like just throwing weird. Like Savage has the really high angle, and Tong has this really weird angle as well. So it's not just great stuff, but it's great stuff plus total outlier, presentation and deception. And I feel like those type of traits are 100% going to destroy the minor leagues, where there's not as much cat and mouse, there's not as much understanding of like an entire lineups approach against a weird pitcher to kind of wear him down, how we're going to break this guy. It's more like just one-on-one, take our chances, and we don't really understand why this fastball is so good. But then the big leagues, it gets a little tougher. I think the answer for these guys is, the question for these guys is what happens when everybody starts to get comfortable with this, with what they got. But that initial time through, you're not going to get comfortable because it's so abnormal. And you could feel it right away in the box.
Yes.
So you see there, you're looking for a pitch a little more middle down here because you don't really want to swing at the top rail against this guy, right? You want to kind of get him fly high.
No, you do. Correct. No, you do not. And so that was one of the things. I was just like, I'm literally over at first base talking to my first base coach, and I'm like, I can't believe he left a 1-2 fastball middle. Like, he could have thrown me 3 curveballs in the dirt, and I probably would have struck out. But again, that was one of the things. He's got to go with his best pitch. He's going for the strikeout. He's up 12-0. A single's not going to hurt him.
I mean, and I say this knowing full well that I've thrown many 2-strike pitches right down the middle and given the hitter a chance. But I mean, it's a little bit of a rookie thing there. He's got great stuff. He throws the ball in the box, but his game has been so overwhelming stuff-wise, he hasn't really had to learn, oh, I have to make the proper mistake here, which means if I'm not going to throw it perfectly at the top, I miss for a ball instead of missing down the middle. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Those are small nuanced things that I actually broke down a game where you guys faced Shane Bieber and he was really good against you guys. And
Stud.
like his mistakes were all out of the zone mistakes. Like he either threw a perfect pitch or was out of the zone. So pretty much the whole game he gave like 3 or 4 pitches to hit. That is the tippy top level of execution. And obviously he doesn't have the same stuff as like a young pup coming in the game like Tong, but it's intriguing the difference between the two. One guy, great stuff, great deception, maybe not the best idea yet of where to throw it all the time in every count. And then another guy who's got less stuff, but has more, command and shiftiness within the zone and out of the zone. So it's just intriguing to watch guys in different stages of their career and kind of how the calculus of facing them is different every time. Did you guys face McLean too at all or no?
Not in the big leagues. We faced him in the minor leagues.
He's nasty.
So yes, you want to talk about a sweeper, slider, whatever you want to call it, that thing. I mean, I tried, like we talked about, to get release points. I tried to get it over the shortstop's head. And even if it was over the shortstop's head, it was still hitting me in the back foot.
Yeah, his breaking stuff incredible. Is different.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to overstate. If you spin the ball like 3,200 RPM, it's just a blur coming in.
Yes.
So it's really hard.
I mean, he's got one going one way, one going the other way, and then he's got something going down.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, he's got enough going on that he's, of course, I mean, he's a very good pitcher. But he is a pitcher. He's going to make mistakes. He is young, but he's one of the guys that I saw even in the minor leagues that didn't make mistakes. Like Sproat, great stuff, good stuff, but made a lot of mistakes, and especially against us. I think in the minors, in a first inning on a Saturday, Friday game, I think we put up 7 runs in the first inning because he just made a couple mistakes. But then the next time we faced him, he went 5 shutout. So it just. It's different stuff. Where McLean, I don't think we put up any runs in like 2 or 3 games.
He's got a little bit. Sproat has a little bit less margin for error than a McLean because like his spin's not the same. Like his pitches they don't dart as hard. They're not as drastic they're not violent with their movement as much as McLean. It's still very hard, still good stuff, still good contact stuff. But there's definitely a little bit of nuance there. What was I going to say? Oh, I was curious, actually. Have you come across Thomas White at all? Have you seen him pitch at all with the Marlins system?
No, I've never seen him pitch. I just missed him. When I got called up, he got called up to AAA. I've heard nothing but great things. I know he's a highly touted prospect, but I've heard he's a nice guy, and that's about all I know about him.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was just curious. I mean, just kind of curious out of nowhere, just because he came up as one of their top prospects. I was curious if he had been up there at all close to you. I was trying to look up Sproat versus Jacksonville, but I think you might have been called up by the time he made this start.
Gotcha.
Anyway,
it should have been in Syracuse.
Yeah, like sometime in June, maybe.
Well, I mean, we faced Sproat in the big leagues too.
Yes.
So you can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he threw me a cutter. He was nice enough to throw me a little cutter.
I got one at bat here. I don't know if this is even anything. Yeah, I have some. This is like a ground out or something. Ooh, you're rocking the mustache at this point.
Good swing, bad aim. Oh, didn't touch Troy. Well, why'd you have to show this one? I didn't even touch first.
No hard 90 there.
no hard 90 and trips. It was my birthday the next day. It's okay. I was a little hungover.
So what's the focus on this offseason? What are some things that you're working on? Is it all just maintain the strengths? Is there any weaknesses you're working on? And what's the mindset headed into Salt River Fields this year?
That's a great question. A lot of it has to do with timing. So if you notice, you pulled up my Baseball Savant page, didn't do very well against 4 seams. A lot of that is focused on that specifically. So working on 4 seams at the top of the zone, working on how can I stay above it, through it, kind of driving it over the shortstop, whether lefty, righty, doesn't matter. trying to cut down my leg kick as much as possible to where I'm just making a move forward, really driving the hips. And then the big thing for me is I'm also working on chase. I'd like to be, especially at Coors Field, where guys are going to miss. They're going to, they're going to play that cat and mouse game. I want to swing at better pitches because it truly does help every number you can think of and help the team win. If I can get on base, if I can walk 4 times, that is something that'll help the team win. If I can, at least have a good at bat and swing at strikes and, take a 13 pitch at bat, that helps the team win. So if I can cut down chase and focus on hitting 4 seams at the top of the zone, 4 seams at the bottom, I think that overall I will be able to execute my plan with not only looking for off speed in certain counts, but also being able to dominate fastballs when the time comes.
I find it intriguing. You were talking about making the swing a little more efficient, leg kick coming down just a touch. It's one of the first things I would look at as a pitcher is if a guy had a lot of movement, a lot of timing mechanism in his swing, something that was a little more than subtle. I would often feel like, okay, that's another thing I can throw in there at this guy. I can be a little slower on one delivery. I can be a little quicker on another delivery. I can try to make him get out of his comfort zone with his timing at the plate. And typically the guys who are obviously the best at this, the best at making their swing super short, are the ones that are so strong where they don't need to create a lot, so they can still go pole to pole. Obviously, you look at a lot of the big dogs in the game, they don't have a lot going on with their initial move. But I still think it behooves everybody below that threshold as well, because in the big leagues, if you give them one extra way to mess with you, it might be one too many, right? So ultimately, there's something to be said for always trying to get to the most efficient version of your move, whether that's as a pitcher or as a hitter. And it's intriguing that you said that and that you picked up on that right away. That'll definitely help you get to more fastballs for sure, or make better swing decisions too. If you're more ready to hit, technically you have a little bit more room to decide yes or no. So I think that's a big part of it as well.
Well, I think also the thing is too, I'm 28, I'm a little bit older. I know who I am as a baseball player. I'm not trying to be anybody else at this point. I'm not 20 and I'm not trying to, hit 40 home runs. I know I'm not going to be that guy. Maybe I unlock something and maybe I do hit 40, but I'm going to hit my 15 to 20. I'm going to hit upper 200s and maybe touch that 300 threshold. But if I can be the most efficient hitter that I can, and like you said, spray the ball all over the place, hit my home runs when the pitch allows it, things like that, then that becomes a more well-rounded player, a more executed player, a more polished player. And I think that's what I pride myself on, is that I try to do everything right and not just do one thing right.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the way it looks when I watch you play, no doubt, all-around player. I am curious about the chase thing. I remember being on the bus 2 years ago, having a long conversation with JD Martinez and Jose Iglesias. And Jose was talking about how in his baseball DNA, the way he was raised to play the game, his 2-strike approach was if it's close, swing, foul it off, see another pitch, be annoying, wait for the pitcher to make a mistake, then go ahead and get your hit. However, oftentimes when you're super good at that strategy or committed to that strategy, that will make that chase percentage rise, right? Because now you're chasing pitches that are a couple inches off the plate, whereas like a Juan Soto spitting on that pitch and reaping the benefits. They're both good approaches, is my point. From a practical standpoint, as a pitcher, it's equally as frustrating at times for a guy to spit at my pitch 2 inches off the corner as to foul it off. Interestingly, though, the way it's valued is probably much more heavy into valuing the guy who takes the pitch as opposed to swings and fouls it off. So I'm kind of curious, like, how easy is it to get out of that mindset when that's likely something that most batters have been taught from a young age, which is to protect the plate with 2 strikes?
So 100%, I think you're right. I also think that having the right approach and having the right mindset and being on time is all byproducts of taking those 2-inch pitches off the plate, fouling off that close one, doing something like where if you're up there and you're like, I'm going to hit a fastball wherever it's at, you're probably going to chase a lot of different pitches. If you're like, okay, I'm looking for, a fastball, he's got a sinker, I'm looking for a fastball that's close to me. Anything that starts middle away, give him the outer third, like whatever it is. And that's that pitch that, he misses by 2 inches and you're sitting on the mound going, how did he just take that? Like,
Because
that
you
was one of
weren't
my best
looking in that
pitches.
area anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. I wasn't looking for that area. Or you got a cutter guy, and maybe I'm looking for something out over the plate where, like, you throw a cutter that starts middle and it ends up, right in front of my jersey. And I took it. And you're like, usually guys are breaking their bats on that or something like that. And so if I can elevate my approach, maybe I get less chase. So if I can elevate that, if I can be on time, because a lot of it is if I'm late and like you're talking about, you mix the timing just a little bit. Maybe you go quick on one and I'm late. There's a really high chance I'm gonna take that pitch because I can't see it as well. I'm just not ready to hit at that
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah.
how can I be ready to hit and on time every single pitch so that when the pitch that I want comes into my zone, I can either do damage or take it so I can get to the next pitch to do damage.
Makes sense. Yeah. So it's an approach based thing that will then
Yes.
allow you to be able to be a little more disciplined. I also
I
think,
mean,
and here's maybe something that I don't know if you've looked into or not. When you're studying a pitcher, there are pitchers that only get strikeouts swinging. Like they don't understand how to freeze guys. And I think that's an important thing to note because if their whole game is relying on chase, then you can have a pretty good inclination when you get to 2 strikes that that's the only way they can beat you is by getting you to swing at a bad pitch. If you're facing like a Ranger Suarez or an Aaron Nola or a guy who can freeze you, well, then that adds a little bit of a different layer. But
correct.
honestly, in the big leagues with the stuff that a lot of guys have, they've just been told to spam it down the middle and with 2 strikes, make everybody chase. And so sometimes if you study those guys ahead of time, you can understand, who's going to probably be out of the zone when they're ahead in the count against you. And that can be a little bit of an advantage as well. So, it's the anticipation, but also being on time to your point that sets you up to make better swing decisions. But hitting is so hard, man. I don't know how you guys do it. It's so reactive.
So hard.
It's so damn reactive.
Well, it's so hard. Well, and if you really look at me too, and I know I'm not a specimen. I'm not, an Aaron Judge. I'm not a Mike Trout. I'm not this freak athlete. So I've actually gotten to this point in my career just by trying to be smarter than all the other players. I would have loved to be a specimen. I would have loved to just be an absolute monster.
Yeah.
But I don't have that luxury, so I have to rely on being significantly smarter than the pitcher, than the other hitters, than everybody on the baseball field, or at least, fake it till I make it.
Well, you're doing a great job of it. I wish you nothing but the best in Colorado. I think it's going to be a great place for you. Put the ball in play out there, man. Be smarter than everybody out there. You'll have an
Peace.
advantage. You'll have an advantage because you'll see. And if you notice it and you buy into it, you'll be able to adjust better home and road than other guys because obviously the ball's going to move about 20% more on the road than at home. That's not the boogeyman that it seems. Unless you're in denial about it. So you're already smart. You got a good head on your shoulders. I'm sure you'll make the necessary adjustments, and I wish you nothing but the best. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. You're the man, and you always will be. So thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate it, man. I look forward to coming on your show sometime. So
All right, I like it.
thanks so
Hey,
much.
there we go.
Enjoy it out there in what looks like a rainy, cold Pacific Northwest.
Yes, it is. All right, I will.
All right.
We'll talk to you later, Adam.
Yes, have a good one.
Thanks.
All right, adios. All right, that was Troy. He came on. He was great, man. That was a sick hour right there. We talked, man, a lot of hitting stuff, some Marlin stuff. We got a little insight on some of the stuff that they've been doing over there that, some of it's good, some of it we don't know yet. But man, that was a blast. So big thanks for Troy coming on. And we'll get back in the chat here for the last, I don't know, what do we got? 15, 20 minutes left. And we'll keep it going. Yeah, Troy does. Troy talks really well. Very intelligent, very well spoken. He said so much important stuff in there. There was so many points where he was talking and I wanted to go in one direction, then he said something else and it pulled me in another direction. But overall, we'll have Troy on again. I want Troy on again this season after we see how he gets started with the Rockies and how that's going. But I'm excited for him going to a hitter's haven. I think his game will play really well. He puts the ball in play. And for all you people that are begging for a rise to go to the Rockies, set it aside so our guy Troy can be there and can rake for the boys in purple. Great interview. Loved hearing from a younger player. I feel like we've mostly had vets so far. Yeah, obviously, trying to get some more variety here. Yeah. Trying to get a little more variety on here in terms of the guests, but that was cool. He gave us even a little bit of med insight about some of the differences between some of the guys he's seen. I have to figure out why my dugout app's not working. I have to write somebody over at MLB. Please help me. But I don't know. That was really fun. And now we can get back into the chat for a little bit, and we'll finish strong here today. Thanks for everybody hanging with me today. All right, here we go. My wife loves the brotherhood. Yep, always a brotherhood in baseball for sure. It was intriguing to hear him talk a little bit about the difficulty of hitting and how really the adjustment he's trying to make right now is less chase and a little less movement in the swing. That's something that I've talked about a lot because, I might have been a hitter, but I certainly know how to face hitters. And if a guy has a lot going on in the swing, it just gives you another possible get out of jail free card. I can disrupt his timing and get him to not, have a full force swing. Without a full force swing, pretty unlikely you're going to do extra base type damage, and extra base type damage ultimately is what scores runs. So I remember the Tong at bat and Tong having that 12-0 lead and thinking, who the F just got that hit? Yeah, Troy, good line drive hitter. And yeah, we saw Jonah kind of miss middle down there, which is probably the one area with his fastball he doesn't want to miss. He wants to live at the top of the zone or at the very, very bottom or on the outer inner edges. Middle down, probably not the best. All right, so I did want to... Yeah, and that fastball is elite. So there's some more evidence. Somebody who's actually stood with the cleats in the dirt versus Jonah Tong and can tell you, yes, that fastball is crazy. So when you're thinking about Jonah as a prospect, it all starts with the stuff he's putting out there. And the fastball is the first part of that. It's elite. It's high level. It's the highest of the high levels. This was what we were talking about again. I mean, just you see it. It's completely almost out of the chart. So very curious to watch Jonah pitch this year. We'll see if he breaks with the squad, with the Mets this year. We'll see what his impact is. But 40% strikeout rate tells me there's some really good stuff in there to be unlocked, and we'll just see how it goes. Anyway, back to the ARB talk. Because as I mentioned, 18 players exchange filing figures now. They will have a hearing scheduled right around spring training time, so February, early February. But yeah, I mean, I would expect a lot of these to go to the hearing because these are file and trial now. This is what the big leagues is. Somebody asked earlier in the chat if the Blue Jays had anybody. Eric Lauer is the only one. 5.75 he filed at, and the team filed at 4.4. That's a pretty big discrepancy. He probably wants to be judged as a starting pitcher. I think the issue for Eric is that he probably pitched maybe a bit too much out of the bullpen. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, 15 starts, to me, that's pretty good. 104 innings. He did make another 13 relief appearances. So, the Blue Jays will try to peg him of something of a swingman. He'll try to get paid more as a starter. That's what that will come down to. A little bit there in that argument, but he's one of the few. These are all pretty good players. We're going to go ahead and argue their case. And as I mentioned before, we have no idea why the panel votes the way they do, except that they tend to be about 50-50 at the end of the day between the players winning and the teams winning. So keep an eye out for that. I bet you'll see more of the same. Here's a good question. Do arbitrators factor in playoff numbers at all? So we don't know what they actually factor in, but no, they're not supposed to. But I would say, look, if you're like a World Series hero, like how does that not play in? Like how is that not mentioned? Your overall contribution to the club was driving playoff success, So I think it's part of it, but technically, no. Technically, it's all driven by comps in terms of what previous players earned. And a lot of that was driven by traditional statistics. That's why power hitters get paid the most. Home runs, RBIs, things like that matter. As a pitcher, it starts, wins, saves, strikeouts, basic stuff like that that drives a lot of the salary talk as well. So, and final figures. So, it's a little bit of that. And we'll just have to see how these play out. The Skubal one is amazing because he is really just saying, look, I've won 2 Cy Youngs. I'm the best pitcher in the sport. I think I'm much more comparable to a Zach Wheeler, you know, and what he earns than, you know, 2015 David Price. And on top of that, I'm going to go pitch in the WBC, which you probably don't want me to do, but I'm doing it anyway. And he's just really forcing the Tigers into an uncomfortable spot. So it's going to be very intriguing how this all plays out. If it gets ugly, if it goes to the hearing or not, where the number gets set, how this pulls everybody else up. But make no mistake about it, like there'll be a lot of eyes on this if it does go to hearing. And I wish these would be televised. These should be public. That would be a hell of a program. Put them on MLB Network, right? That would be so fun. Maybe not for the people involved, but I think it would be super interesting. Now we need a Tong interview. Don't know Jonah yet. Hoping to get him on at some point. I think the next guest we're going to have is Michael King. And then probably Charlie Blackman, I think, is a yes. And I'm working on some of the other scheduling as well. Lauer has been a starter his whole career. Then he gets 13 relief appearances this year, and the Jays want to make the case he's a reliever now. Yeah. I mean, again, it's always, you know, it's funny when you go to Arb, and he's not a first-year Arb guy, so it's really all based off of the previous season. It doesn't take your whole career into account anymore. It does a little bit that first time through, where like you get judged off of like all 3 years headed into that Arb 1. But after that, it's supposed to be like kind of a jump from the previous year, but you're judged on that previous year's stats. And yeah, he did make 13 relief appearances. So I mean, look, they're always gonna. It's like anything else. You're trying to get the best value for the. You're trying to get the most production for the least amount of money on the ownership side always. So that's kind of what's happening with Mr. Lauer. They're going to probably argue that, and that's probably not too good of a feeling for him, but we'll see how that plays out. And the fact that they tendered him means they want him on the team, but they'll still argue over every nickel the whole way, even though they're paying like 90% tax on any free agent they sign right now and they don't give a crap. They'll still fight Lauer over a couple $100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. Why are they not supposed to include playoffs? Well, it's because technically it's all based off of the regular season. Postseason, not everybody has a chance to be in it. And it's not always your fault that you're not in it. Like Mike Trout was winning MVPs and his teams wasn't in the postseason, so can't penalize him for that necessarily. But I mean, of course, postseason success can't help but bleed into the minds of the arbitrators. I would expect. Arbitration is a hell of a process. Your team telling you aren't worth what you think is a business for sure. And we've seen some crazy ones. Dellin Betances versus the Yankees, Josh Hader versus and Corbin Burns, both versus the Brewers. Corbin Burns, they try to make a case that he was the reason they didn't make the postseason because he wasn't willing to pitch on 3 days rest or something down the stretch, or he wasn't as effective down the stretch when he was their best pitcher all year. I guess you got to really try to affect the opinion of these arbitrators, but I thought that was probably pretty tough to hear from Burns, and obviously we know he didn't like that too much. So feelings can get hurt in this situation, particularly on the player side, and I think it can be jarring for a guy who thought that maybe everything was love, and maybe it wasn't all love when it came down to business. So people can definitely get butthurt and offended, and all that's real. All of that is 100% real, as I've talked about a number of times before. So has anything else happened yet today? I mean, I feel like it has been ice cold quiet. All we're hearing is rumors. Bellinger offer, rumors. Ketel Marte traded or not traded, rumors. Phillies meeting with Bo Bichette, rumors. Who the F knows, right? So I guess we'll just wait and see. I really have no idea. Yeah, Skubal should be walking in. He should hold them both. I know he probably won't have the trophy yet, but he should. He should walk him in, put him right on the table for vibes. So I think that's the biggest thing. All right, the wife is saying we should wrap it up. Daisy is probably hungry. Daisy, you hungry, girl? You want to say bye to the people? The official pup of Baseball and Coffee and Baseball After Dark and everything. There's this cute puppy right here, and I'm going to go give her some food. Thank you for hanging with me. I'll be back on Monday, 10 a.m., Baseball and Coffee. Usual time, usual place. We'll have some more guests. I believe I have a guest either this Monday or next Monday. Hopefully we get some action, some stuff to talk about as we continue to go into this very slow January. But thanks again for hanging. You guys are the best. Hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Troy. Big shout out to Troy for coming on. At the crack of dawn, Pacific Northwest, it was like 7:45 when he came on. So big shout out to him. We'll definitely have him on again some point in the future. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you in the Discord, and I'll see you guys on Monday. All right. Have a great weekend, and see you guys later.